The woman who conquered Louisiana's deadliest swamps lost everything when the cameras stopped rolling, and her story reveals the devastating cost of reality TV fame that nobody talks about. Elizabeth Dupree was born on January 21, 1970, in Pierre Part, Louisiana, into a world where survival meant mastering the ancient art of alligator hunting. While most kids grew up playing with toys, Liz grew up with alligators, learning secrets that had been passed down through generations of swamp hunters. Her father, C.J. Dupree, was a legendary figure in the Louisiana hunting community who saw something extraordinary in his daughter, the instincts of a natural predator and the courage of someone twice her age. At just 12 years old, while other girls were worried about school dances and teenage drama, Liz was handed her first alligator line in what would become the most important education of her life. This wasn't just a fun family activity or a weekend hobby. This was survival training that would shape every aspect of her future. CJ understood that teaching his daughter to hunt wasn't just about catching gators, it was about respect for the swamp, respect for the creatures they hunted, and respect for the danger that surrounded them every single day in the Louisiana bayou. One mistake in those murky waters could mean death, and CJ made sure his daughter understood that harsh reality from the very beginning. The bond between father and daughter was unbreakable, forged through countless hours together in the swamp, learning to read water patterns, understand animal behavior, and master the art of the perfect shot. CJ wasn't just teaching Liz to hunt, he was creating a legend who would one day become known as the Gator Queen. But neither of them knew that this training would eventually make her famous, and that same fame would destroy everything they had built together. By the time Liz reached adulthood, she had become one of the most skilled hunters in Louisiana, capable of tracking an alligator through murky water, predicting its movement, and taking it down with a single shot. Her reputation spread throughout the hunting community, but Liz wasn't interested in recognition, she was interested in tradition, family, and the ancient ways of the swamp. Everything changed in 2011 when the History Channel came calling. They were looking for authentic hunters for their new show called Swamp People, and they had heard about a woman in Louisiana who could hunt alligators better than most men. When they approached Liz, she was hesitant because television meant exposure, and exposure meant losing the privacy that had always protected her family. But the producers convinced her that the show would honor the traditions of the swamp and show the world the real Louisiana culture she had grown up with. Liz joined Troy Landry's crew as his shooter in season 2, and from her first appearance, viewers were mesmerized. Here was a woman who didn't just hunt alligators, she commanded them. She moved through the swamp like she owned it, her rifle steady, her aim perfect, speaking in a thick Louisiana accent that was authentic and real. There was no fake drama, no manufactured conflict, just pure skill and genuine passion for what she did. The audience response was immediate and overwhelming as social media exploded with praise for the new cast member. Fans started calling her the Gator Queen, and the nickname stuck, but Liz had no idea that fame would come with a price that would eventually cost her everything. Behind the scenes, the television industry was already changing Liz's life in ways she didn't expect. Suddenly, she wasn't just a hunter anymore, she was a brand. The network wanted her to do interviews, attend events, and maintain a public image. The woman who had always valued her privacy was now living in the spotlight, and it was deeply uncomfortable. The pressure was intense as every hunt was filmed, every word was recorded, and every mistake was captured on camera. Liz was used to hunting with her father, where the only audience was the swamp itself, but now millions of people were watching her every move, judging her performance, and expecting her to be perfect every single time. By season 3, Liz had proven herself so thoroughly that she was given her own boat, becoming the captain of the only female-led hunting team in the show's history. This was a massive achievement, but it also meant more responsibility and more pressure. Every decision she made was scrutinized, every shot she took was analyzed, and every success was expected rather than celebrated. The spontaneous joy that had made her famous was being replaced by the calculated performance that television demanded, and she was losing herself in the character she had created. The tragedy deepened in season 4 when Liz's 17-year-old daughter Jessica joined the show. The producers loved the mother-daughter dynamic, and fans were excited to see the next generation of hunters. Jessica earned the nickname Gator Princess, and together they formed the most popular team on the show. But bringing Jessica into the television world was a decision that Liz would later regret, as she was exposing her teenage daughter to the same pressures that were already wearing her down. The constant filming, the public scrutiny, the loss of privacy, all of this was now affecting her child too. Liz had wanted to pass on the family tradition, but instead she was passing on the burden of fame. The money was substantial. Liz was earning around $10,000 per episode, and her estimated net worth reached between $300,000 and $500,000. But money couldn't buy back the simplicity of her old life. The woman who had once hunted for tradition and family was now hunting for television ratings and advertising revenue. The stress began to show in subtle ways as Liz became quieter on set, more focused on the cameras than on the hunt itself. The authentic woman who had captured America's heart was slowly disappearing beneath the manufactured persona that television demanded. Then in 2013, the most devastating blow struck when C.J. Dupree, Liz's father and mentor, passed away. The man who had taught her everything about hunting, about the swamp, about life itself, was gone. For Liz, this wasn't just the loss of a parent, it was the loss of her anchor, her guide, and her connection to the authentic world she had grown up in. The grief was overwhelming because CJ had been more than a father to Liz. He had been her hunting partner, her teacher, and her best friend. Without him, the swamp felt empty and foreign, and the traditions they had shared together felt meaningless without someone to share them with. The television producers saw her grief as an opportunity for drama, wanting to film her mourning and capture her pain for the entertainment of millions. They pushed her to talk about her father's death, to visit meaningful locations, to perform her grief for the cameras. This commercialization of her most personal loss was the beginning of the end for Liz's relationship with the show. Meanwhile, the pressure of fame was affecting her family life as her husband Justin struggled with his wife's celebrity status and the constant intrusion of cameras into their private moments. Their marriage, which had been strong before the show, was now strained by the demands of television production and public attention. Jessica was also feeling the weight of being in the public eye. The teenager who had once enjoyed hunting with her mother was now dealing with online criticism, public expectations, and the pressure to maintain a television persona. The family tradition that had once brought them together was now driving them apart as Liz began to question everything. Was the money worth the loss of privacy? Was the fame worth the stress on her family? Was the show honoring the traditions she loved, or was it exploiting them for profit? These questions haunted her as she continued to perform for the cameras, but her heart was no longer in. The breaking point came in February 2015, when Liz arrived at what she thought was a routine meeting with the show's producers. Instead, she was told that she and Jessica were being removed from Swamp People. There was no warning, no explanation, no chance to negotiate. After 6 seasons of being the show's most popular cast member, she was simply fired. The official reason was never clearly stated, with the network mentioning unknown reasons and creative decisions, but industry insiders suggested it was about money and control. Liz had been demanding higher pay and more creative input, and the producers didn't want to deal with a cast member who had opinions about how the show should be run. The firing was devastating because Liz had built her identity around being the Gator Queen, and suddenly, that identity was stripped away. She was no longer a television star, she was just Elizabeth Dupree from Pierrepont, Louisiana, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. The financial impact was immediate and severe, as without the $10,000 per episode, Liz and her family struggled to maintain their lifestyle. They had to sell assets, cut expenses, and adjust to a dramatically reduced income. The woman who had been wealthy just months before was now worrying about paying bills. But the emotional impact was even worse as Liz fell into a deep depression. She had lost her father, her career, and her sense of purpose all within a few years. The woman who had been fearless in the face of deadly alligators was now afraid to leave her house. She withdrew from friends, avoided public appearances, and struggled with basic daily activities. The social media posts that fans analyzed for clues about her return were actually cries for help. When Liz shared photos of herself cooking traditional meals, she was trying to reconnect with parts of her identity that hadn't been corrupted by television. When she posted pictures from the swamp, She was seeking comfort in the one place that had never betrayed her. Her health began to deteriorate as the stress of losing everything she had worked for took a physical toll. In 2019, she underwent gallbladder surgery, which she later revealed was related to years of suppressed stress and anxiety. The woman who had always been physically strong was now facing the reality that her body was breaking down under emotional pressure. Jessica watched her mother's transformation with confusion and sadness, as the confident, powerful woman who had raised her was now struggling to get through each day. Their relationship, which had been the heart of their television presence, became strained as they both tried to process the trauma of their sudden fall from fame. Justin found himself married to someone he barely recognized. The woman he had fallen in love with had been confident and strong, but now she was fragile and uncertain. Their marriage survived, but it required patience, understanding, and a complete rebuilding of their relationship. The years between 2015 and 2021 were the darkest of Liz's life, as she dealt with depression, financial stress, health problems, and the complete loss of the identity that had defined her for years. The woman who had once been called the Gator Queen was now just trying to survive each day. But slowly, something began to change. In the depths of her despair, Liz started to remember who she had been before the cameras. She began to cook traditional Louisiana meals, not for social media but for her own healing. She returned to the swamp, not to perform but to reconnect with the place that had shaped her. She started to rebuild her life on her own terms, and the healing process was slow and difficult. Liz had to learn to define herself without the television show that had made her famous, find value in activities that didn't come with applause or recognition, and remember that her worth wasn't measured by ratings or social media followers. In 2021, Liz made a surprising decision to return to Swamp People for 5 episodes in season 12. This wasn't about money or fame, it was about closure. She wanted to show herself and her fans that she had survived the worst period of her life and come out stronger. The woman who appeared on screen in 2021 was different from the one who had left in 2020. She was more cautious, more guarded, but also more authentic. She had learned to protect herself from the pressures of television, while still honoring the traditions that had made her famous. Today, Liz Cavalier lives quietly on Pecan Island with her husband Justin and his children, Destin and Dee. Her estimated net worth is around $400,000, which might seem modest compared to other reality stars, but represents something more valuable than money: independence, and the freedom to live according to her own values. She has found peace in simple activities, cooking traditional Cajun meals, teaching young hunters about respecting the ecosystem, and participating in conservation efforts. She has become what she always was beneath the television persona: a keeper of traditions, a guardian of culture, and a woman whose strength doesn't need an audience to be real. Liz Cavalier's story is ultimately about the cost of fame and the value of authenticity. She achieved everything that society tells us we should want: money, recognition, influence, but learned that these things mean nothing if they come at the expense of your soul. Her greatest victory wasn't catching the biggest alligator or earning the most money. It was learning to walk away from things that didn't serve her well-being. The woman who was once called the Gator Queen discovered that real power comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching, finding strength in quiet moments, peace in simple activities, and joy in relationships that weren't performed for cameras. Her legacy isn't just about hunting alligators or breaking barriers, it's about choosing authenticity over approval and finding the courage to live life on your own terms.